Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for coming here today to attend the Provost lecture series on women in leadership. We have this lecture series now for the past 3 years, and the purpose of this series is to bring in prominent, successful women to share their experiences, especially in the technical areas, but for that matter anywhere, and become a role model for our community in leadership. And we are very thankful today and excited to have with us Lori Traweek to talk to us about America's policy, the challenges of meeting the demand. Lori is the Chief Operating Officer of the American Gas Association. She works with members of Congress, corporate leaders, and state and federal regulators to ensure that an effective approach to national energy policy is taken and to achieve operational excellence in the safe and reliable delivery of natural gas to more than 177 million Americans. 177 million Americans is more than a half of the population of the United States, right? Prior to her current responsibilities, Lori was integrally involved in AGA's pipeline safety and environmental advocacy, including participating in the development of the EPA STAR program to encourage volunteer operations, reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, serving on the executive steering team of the Department of Transportation's Distribution Integrity Management Program, and participating in the launch of the Common Ground Alliance, a collaborative organization with the goal of reducing excavation damage of underground facilities. Ms. Traweek chairs the National Energy Foundation Board and serves on the International Gas Union Presidency team, which convenes over 90 countries to affect global energy policy. She also serves on the GTI, the Gas Technology Institute board, and is AGA's executive liaison for the Center for Energy Workforce Development. So Lori is wearing a lot of hats. Before joining AGA, Lori worked as an onshore engineer for ARCO Oil and Gas in Texas and Louisiana. She holds a BS degree in mechanical engineering from Purdue and a BS degree in communications from Ithaca College. So she followed the path right at the intersection of being a great communicator for a technical issue, basically. That's what sums it up. In her distinguished career, Lori has received the American Public Gas Association's Personal Service Award. She's a Rader Energy Key Women in Energy America's Leadership honoree. She received Purdue University's Outstanding Mechanical Engineering Achievement Award and the National Association of State Fire Marshals Norman Y. Mineta Excellence in Transportation Safety Award. So we're very, very happy to have you here, Lori, today. And if you join me all to give Lori a great welcome to Stevens and thanking her for being here.
Well, I don't know what that all means to you. What it means to me is I've been around for a while. But it's great to be here. I am originally from New Jersey, so it's always nice to be back in my home state, especially nice to be away from Washington, D.C. It's a little crazy there these days. I don't know whether you've noticed. But I am really pleased to be able to talk to this group here today in Hoboken. I haven't been in Hoboken in probably 25 years or so. Wow, it's really, really nice. So I have a question for all of you just to get started, and that is, how many of you think about how you get your energy? And I'm not talking about your energy to get through the day, to stay awake through your classes, to get all those exams you need to grade. I'm talking about when that smartphone alarm goes off and you get up and you take that hot shower, hopefully provided by a natural gas water heater, and then you move your way into the kitchen and you plug in that coffee machine, get that first hot cup of coffee, maybe whip up some breakfast on a natural gas stove, turn on the television, surf the web. How many of you marvel at how incredible it is that you have that energy there at your beck and call? In fact, do any of you daily thank your local utility, Public Service Electric and Gas, New Jersey Resources, Consolidated Edison, National Grid, Orange and Rockland, whoever it might be, do you daily thank them for that incredible accomplishment? Yeah, that's probably going a little too far, isn't it? But I want to take a few minutes to talk to you about my journey to where I am now thinking about energy daily, and then talk a little bit about the state of energy in this industry and the state of energy in this country, and a little bit about how the decisions are made around energy. I'm going to have a call to action, and then we can open it up for questions and answers. So, I have to admit, I did not always think about energy all the time. When I was 10 years old, I wanted a career in sports broadcasting. I wanted to be the first woman to do play-by-play on Monday Night Football. That was my goal. And I actually followed that ambition right through college. That's the degree from Ithaca College in communications. When I graduated, I worked at a few television stations, interned, and I recognized that while I really enjoyed the field, the industry just wasn't for me, just was not a good fit. So I had to reset. And I have to admit that after 11 years of thinking that I knew exactly what I wanted to do, that was a little tough. My father, who is a PhD chemical engineer, gently encouraged me to consider that because I truly enjoyed math, maybe I should switch gears. No pun intended. Maybe I should move into engineering. So I did. I had to pick up some basic science classes like chemistry, physics. Somehow I managed to skip those even while I was in high school. Picked those classes up at Rutgers, not too far from here. You all know Rutgers, right? I won't ask you what you think of Rutgers compared to Stevens. I took a few classes there, and then I rolled in Purdue University for mechanical engineering full-time. Now, while I was at Purdue, I really wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with that mechanical engineering degree. And so I decided I should probably get a summer job, just try something out. I signed up for as many interviews as I could with the companies that were coming to visit, which, by the way, if you didn't know, that's a difference between communications and engineering. Communications, I think I had to send out about 100 resumes just to even get somebody to call. And in engineering, the companies actually came to the campus to see if I wanted to go work for them. That was quite a switch. So I sign up for all these different companies, and I start interviewing. And well, I might suggest that the first time that I realized that what I do was really important to me was when I made that decision to move away from television and radio, because I just didn't think it was a good fit for me. The second time that I had that realization was I was interviewing with General Dynamics, great company. And we started talking about what General Dynamics does, and specifically what this particular summer job would be. And they said, well, we would want you to go down to Newport News and work on nuclear submarines. And I thought, wow, nuclear submarines, weapon, war. I want absolutely nothing to do with weapons and war. So, no, sorry, that's not where I'm going to go. I ended up taking a summer job at Arco Oil and Gas. And the first week I was there, they put me on a helicopter. They sent me to an offshore platform in the Gulf of Mexico. And I was looking at the sun over the horizon. Dolphins were swimming around the platform. And then they started to talk to me about what happens on that platform. That 10,000 feet below, they were bringing up oil and gas, that they were sending that oil and gas back to the coast where it would get processed, that it would then go miles across the country, and it would provide energy needs for everyone in the United States. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. The food on the offshore platform was pretty good too, that helped. So, I was hooked. I worked at ARCO for the summer, finished out my last year, and then I had to decide where I was going to go full time. And again, just wanting to make sure that I knew exactly what I was getting into and making sure it was something that I could really get excited about, I decided I would just check out a few other industries before I committed to going back to ARCO. So, third example of where I had this realization that it wasn't all about the money for me, it wasn't necessarily about the location. What mattered to me was how I was spending my day. It needed to be something that I could get excited about. Kimberly-Clark, another great company. I was interviewing with Kimberly-Clark, state-of-the-art technology, mechanical engineering's dream in terms of some of the equipment that they had there on their assembly line. Really, really, really cool. And then I'm sitting down with the person who is interviewing me, and he excitedly reaches down into his desk and he says, "We have had this incredible technology breakthrough." He's so excited, and he whips out a diaper and he shows me that they figured out how to put elastic on the waistband. And I thought, just don't think I can get that excited about a diaper. Now, I will admit this was before I had children. I didn't know at that time how important a really good diaper is. But be that as may, at that time I thought, no, that's just not going to do it for me. So I went back to work for ARCO. And I was a facilities engineer offshore and onshore, and then I ended up at the research facility, and it was a phenomenal experience for me. I met the person that I wanted to marry while I was in Dallas, Texas. And we decided that if he could find a good job opportunity back here on the East Coast, I would leave ARCO because I was interested in getting back. I wanted to be a little closer to New Jersey. So we moved. I interviewed and found a job at the American Gas Association. Didn't know what a trade association was at the time. Have any of you heard of associations, trade associations? You know, ASME and organizations like that, right? What I've come to find out is there is an association for everything. The Association for Recreational Vehicles. There's an association for, one of my favorites, for candy. It's a great one. Whenever we go to the meetings, I always have the best desserts there. There is an association for everything. What was so great about this for me was it was that perfect fit, because it was a job where I was going to be able to use my communications background. I was going to be spending a lot of time in a variety of audiences trying to talk to them about a pretty technical issue. Perfect fit for me. It also ended up being a perfect fit for raising a family. So that was 27 years ago that I joined the American Gas Association. And as I look back over that almost 3 decades, unbelievable, there has never been a more exciting time to be in the energy industry than there is right now. I mean, I have to be frank, back 30 years ago when I would talk about natural gas, the first thing that people would look, they'd laugh. And then they'd think, well, maybe I was talking about gasoline. And I was like, well, no, not gasoline, this is natural gas. And then I would have to explain, well, what is natural gas? And well, do any of you have a blue flame on your stove? And oh. But today it's a lot different. Today, the discussion around energy, it is getting a lot more attention. People are thinking about it more. Not always in the most positive light, but that's okay. It's good that we're having this discussion. So it's a very exciting time to be in the energy industry. So let's talk a little bit about the nation's energy infrastructure and the energy decisions that we need to be thinking about. We have, without a doubt, the energy infrastructure that is the envy of the world. Make no mistake. Just to put it in perspective, and you're probably sitting here thinking, well, of course this would be expected, that 100% of Americans live in a place where they have access to electricity, right? 100%. There are 1.2 billion people in this world, 1.2 billion people in this world that do not live in a place where they have access to electricity. Now here's another way to look at it from a perspective standpoint. Does anybody know how many paved roads there are in this country? You want to venture a guess as to how many paved roads, how many miles? So I can tell you that there are 2.7 million miles of paved roads in this country. Pretty big country, paved roads everywhere. Still a few places where you get some dirt roads, but for the most part, everything's paved. And you can compare that with the fact that there are 2.5 million miles of natural gas pipelines in this country. And that mesh of green and blue that you're seeing there, those are all the natural gas pipelines. There are actually more than double that from an electric standpoint. There are 5.5 million miles of electric distribution and transmission in this country. So we have a pretty amazing infrastructure. We have incredible resources. In the last 25 years, we have doubled the amount of natural gas. And we can talk a little bit later about how that happened. But we've doubled the amount of natural gas that we have here. We are the top producer of natural gas in the world. We are the top producer of oil now in the world. Has significant implications in terms of energy security, in terms of our nation's security, and in terms of the kind of energy choices that you have. So our resources are significant. So what does that mean? Well, it means then that we have tremendous opportunities. Let's look at how the consumption, the energy consumption, has changed over the past decade. On the bottom, the pie chart is 10 years ago, and the top is 2015. So, where is your energy coming from? Your consumption of energy by source. You're going to see there have been some shifts, and it probably shouldn't be too surprising to you. You're going to see that we've had a significant shift from coal, away from coal. We've had a pretty significant shift away from oil. So about 7% decrease in coal, about 6% decrease in oil. We've had about a pretty significant increase in gas, right? About, what have we gone from 22.4% to 29.1%. So again, about 7% increase there. So nice switch there, driven by, as I'm sure you can imagine, concern for the environment, being more aware of trying to address climate change, as well as some other economic conditions, including that the price of natural gas is so favorable now because we have such an abundance of it. Now, there's also been a significant increase in renewables, and we all hear so much about renewables right now, right? And that increase, it's actually been the most significant in a how many times standpoint. We have 5 times the renewables that we had a decade ago. But you can see from this chart what that means is we've gone from 0.1% to 0.5%. Now, I have every reason to believe we are going to continue to significantly see an increased use of renewables. And there are a lot of technology breakthroughs, and again, we'll be referring to that later as to how that can happen. But we will see that. But when you look at this chart, what you recognize is, even if we manage to increase by another 10 times how much we're doing with renewables, we're still going to have an energy mix that includes natural gas, some coal, some nuclear, some oil. And that's not a bad thing, because you really never want to get to the point where you're dependent on any one source. You want to be able to have that kind of flexibility, that kind of mix. And in case too that it is concerning you at all that those renewables are so low, our carbon levels today are as low as they were in the 1990s. So greenhouse gases, CO2, the most significant contributor to climate change. And we are the United States, and we're very proud to be able to present this when we were in Paris at the Global Climate Change Conference, that we now are at levels from 1990s. And a lot of that has to do with efficiency. People are saving, houses are tighter. The switch to natural gas, moving away from coal, and in general, just being more conscientious about trying to get a cleaner energy mix. So we're moving in the right direction. We have a lot of opportunity to be able to continue to transform into a cleaner energy mix. So let's talk a little bit about how we make the decisions as to what our energy mix is. Now for you, it can be where you decide to live. But I would venture to guess that there aren't too many here who have found that perfect house or apartment that you'd love to live in, and then have said, but you know, their electricity is not generated by renewables. Or even, they don't have a natural gas stove. I think I'm going to pass. Has anyone made a decision about where they live based on what their energy generation is, or what even the energy in the house is? Well, probably not too many people do that. So that decision is really made by energy policies that ultimately feed down to what builders build, or what they're allowed to put into homes, and costs and other factors. Perhaps when you go to the Home Depot or the Lowe's and you're able to choose whether or not you're going to get an electric heat pump or a furnace when you need a new one, you might be able to have a decision there. But for the most part, these decisions are made by policy. Where are those decisions being made and who influences them? Well, let's start first by trying to see if we can find some common foundation as to how those energy decisions would be made. So I think you can probably narrow down to about 4 objectives that almost everybody would say, if not everybody, means something to them. And those 4 would be, I want my energy to be reliable. Not too many of you like the feeling of waking up in the morning and not being able to take a hot shower because the power went out, right? You want a reliable source of energy. Pretty important in this country, frankly, has become an expectation. And it's only when something like a Superstorm Sandy comes through that you start to see how fragile the infrastructure can be under very extreme circumstances, but how for the most part, you can rely on that energy that you're getting. You probably want it to be affordable. Something else, again, that in this country we have really been able to benefit from because of the resources that we have. You want it to be clean, and of course you want it to be safe. So those are 4 objectives that I would suggest almost everybody would say, well, of course. Now the difference is going to be what weight you put on those 4, right? What's more important to you? Is it more important for you to be reliable, your energy, affordable, clean, safe? Which one are you willing to put more or less weight on to be able to get an energy that satisfies you? And of course, that's where the debate is. So, what does that mean? Well, you'd like to think, and especially I would say probably everybody in this room would like to think, that the decision, the balance that you're trying to find is going to be based on scientific, fact-based, data-driven decisions. But if anybody has been following any of the politics lately or looked at how decisions are made in general, not just on energy, you know that scientific, fact-based, data-driven it's not always what drives decisions, right? So what drives decisions? Well, of course, politics. So you might have noticed there's a presidential election going on. Is anybody aware that we've got a presidential election this year? Yeah. So just as an example, I won't name candidates, but there was a candidate who put out in published form an energy policy that talked about how important it was for us to move towards a cleaner energy environment, and natural gas should be a very important part of that mix because it's so abundant and it's affordable, and we have this great energy security with natural gas, and it is cleaner, and it can be a great way for us to be able to also move towards a cleaner future as we're developing renewables and other technologies. So that was the published statement. And then that candidate started to get a lot more pressure than I think she realized she was going to get. Did I just give away who that person was? Sorry about that. But she realized that her base wanted to hear a little bit more about the environment and how important the environment is, right? So in one of the debates when they were talking about energy, she started to adjust what she was saying by suggesting that it's going to be so difficult to produce natural gas that I'm just not seeing a lot of production. I'm not seeing a lot of fracking going on. My favorite word, we can talk about that later. So the political pressures, clearly, not necessarily the data-driven, scientific, fact-based approach, but the political pressures have an influence. And of course, it's not only on the presidential race, it's also Congress. It's also the president. We have a president right now who is very committed to climate change decisions, trying to help ensure that we're moving in the right direction. So everyone in his administration has that focus. Political pressure is clearly something that weighs heavy on the minds of those who are trying to decide what the energy policy should be. There are a number of federal agencies. By the way, it shouldn't be a surprise to you that if you have a presentation by someone from Washington, you're going to see a lot of acronyms, right? So this will be a little bit of a quiz as to whether or not you can recognize each one of those agencies up there. But every one of those federal agencies is involved in energy, and every one of them has an agenda that they're trying to follow, and they have the pressures and the pulls to try to make sure that they are accommodating whomever they need to accommodate. So Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, for instance, they give the permission for you to site pipelines, or they give you the permission to site an LNG facility, liquefied natural gas, right? You have EPA, obviously they're doing environmental regulations. The Clean Power Plan is one of the most significant regulations that has been proposed by EPA in a long time, and there's a lot of litigation that's likely to follow that, and there's still a question as to what role or how that Clean Power Plan is going to be implemented. But the bottom line is it's a significant reason why there's been such a drive towards natural gas. So EPA, definitely a player. The Department of Transportation sets the regulations for pipeline safety. and trying to make sure that what has to be done is done safely. And so their regulations address what could be very costly provisions. Their goal is to try to make sure that what they're suggesting is to enhance safety. And then there's the Department of Homeland Security, who cares about physical and cybersecurity, and there's the Department of Energy. Department of Energy sets energy efficiency standards for your appliances. So depending on what they set, that's going to determine what the price of those appliances are and what the availability of those appliances are. So they have a significant role as well as being involved in R&D. Then you move to the state level, right? Because the states all have different policies. New Jersey's got a renewable portfolio standard. I think they're trying to get to 80% reduction by 2050. Okay, that's a New Jersey specific goal. And it's the environmental departments that are involved in there, and it's your public utility commissions. So who is trying to drive those policies, help them make their decisions? Well, you've got your environmental and your energy efficiency advocates. So the Environmental Defense Fund, the National Resource Defense Council, the Sierra Club, the ACEEE. I don't even know if I can remember what that acronym is, but it's basically an energy efficiency group. You, of course, have consumer advocates, and then the business community and the affected industry. And not surprising, they all have competing needs. So here's an example. I started by suggesting that there were 4 objectives that everybody could agree on: reliable, affordable, clean, and safe. But if you were to ask the environmental community if low natural gas prices are a good thing, they would say maybe not. Because if prices of natural gas are low, people are going to use more. If you're an environmental energy efficient advocate, you don't want people using more energy. And they might also say that if natural gas prices are low, that's going to keep developments for renewables from happening at the pace that they would like to see, right? So they're going to say not so great that natural gas prices are low. At the same time, AARP, I know there are a few people in this audience who might be AARP members or at least eligible for AARP. That is, of course, the Retired Persons Association, one of the most powerful associations in the country, by the way. AARP is going to say, whoa, affordability is critically important because our membership, the retired people, the people we represent, they're on fixed incomes. We can't let that price get too high. So those are the pushes and pulls that you're looking at, right? And then there's you and what you want. You're the constituents, so you're influencing those who are trying to run for office. You're also the consumers. And it might not be surprising to you that many of you are taking the attitude that you want absolutely nothing in your backyard, right? NIMBY, nothing in my backyard. You want to put a pipeline through my neighborhood to help that neighborhood next to me? I'm not even going to see the benefit of that? No, don't think so. And there's even another acronym that is the one step beyond NIMBY, and that's BANANA. Build absolutely nothing near anywhere. Yeah, like just don't even talk. So windmills, hydro facilities, LNG plants, pipelines, electric towers, no, don't want any of it. Oh, but by the way, I do want to make sure that I have reliable and affordable electricity. So that's the role that I don't want to suggest any of you would feel this way, but certainly outside of this room, a lot of people are taking on today in terms of how they feel about energy. So all of this is feeding into the energy decisions that we're making today. Seems a little daunting. So I'm going to just step back for a minute and tell you how I think you can best get an energy policy working in this kind of environment. One more here, yes, the media. I had to throw the media in there, not because I used to work in the media, but because really the media influences so much what your perspective is, what's important, what they decide to even cover in the newspaper or news, and how they decide is important. So can't forget the media and the role that they play. Okay, 2 strategies of success. So the first one is relationships, which may sound a little bit odd to you, especially since we're in a time where most people would rather text each other than actually talk to each other on the phone. However, my experience has been, especially when you're talking about issues that can be emotional, you're talking about issues that are complicated and where people tend to have very strong feelings one way or the other, that your best bet of trying to get some kind of a reasonable solution is you have to build relationships with each other. So, example, there was a time when the pipeline safety state regulators, so every state has safety regulators whose role is to oversee pipelines in their state. They thought that industry was the enemy, and industry thought that the pipeline safety regulators were the enemy. Because whenever there was some kind of regulation that the state regulators wanted, and they would file some kind of proposal or comment to the Department of Transportation, who's setting the federal standards, and they would say, we need to regulate X, the industry would file comments and say, that is ridiculous, we don't need X, that's not going to enhance safety, it's only going to increase costs to the consumer, you need Y. So there was this really pretty strong animosity between the pipeline safety regulators and at the state level and the industries that they regulate. So I thought, we should really try to see if we can't do something about that. So we formed a task group at the national level. We got representatives from the state pipeline safety regulators. We got representatives from the industry. And we said, let's see if we can't talk this through. And I'll never forget the first meeting, because we walked into the room and all the state regulators were sitting together on one side and all the industry people were sitting together, and it was this, okay, we're ready to fight. And then we started to talk about an issue. Let's just take an issue. Let's not talk big picture, all you want to do is make money, or all you want to do is to make our life miserable. Let's not talk in generalities. Let's take a specific example of something that you think is important. One of the things we had talked about is protection of meters from vehicles. So in other words, you don't want motor vehicles driving into gas meters. Tend not to have a really good result when that happens. Should something be done about that? And I was, well, of course, we all agree that that's not a good thing. Don't want a car running into a meter. Okay, so we all agree on that. Good. Well, we think there needs to be a regulation that does A, B, C, and D, and the industry said, well, that just is crazy for whatever reasons they had. So it's like, okay, well, let's take that step by step. And before long, we started to realize we actually had more in common in terms of what we were trying to achieve. And once we understood really what the core issue was, we could then find some kind of resolution. And we started to address every issue like that. But yes, we threw in a couple of dinners and lunches together, and we were staying at the same hotel, so often we would end up at the bar at the end of the evening. And before long, we started to make tremendous progress and no longer saw each other as adversaries, but actually saw each other as potential partners. Now, and I should add, the one thing to me, the one that showed that in fact we had accomplished our goal, was the next time we got the group to meet and I walked into the room, We actually had regulators and industry sitting together. You know, it was just a wonderful thing to see. It doesn't mean you're always going to agree. I mean, were many times and still are where we just have to agree to disagree on these issues. But if you have a relationship, if you feel like you can talk to somebody, if you know that there is some common goal in there, you have a much, much better chance of being able to come to some kind of agreement, some kind of policy that's actually going to be a win-win for everybody. So relationships are critically important. But technologies are critically important too. Technology developments are what enable us to be able to accomplish whatever we're trying to accomplish when we're talking about energy. We would not be the largest natural gas producer in this country if it wasn't for the technology development that allowed us to be able to produce natural gas in shale formations. Wouldn't be in this position that we're in today if it wasn't for the R&D that was done by a number of universities. Department of Energy was involved, and the producers who saw that if we could tap into that resource, we would be in a completely different place when it comes to energy. Technology developments are critical, and today, as we're continuing to produce in these shale formations, we've got tremendous R&D going on that's going to be able to reduce the amount of water that you need when you're producing. That's going to be able to make the whole production more efficient. So that starts to help us be able to achieve these other goals that we have, right? And technology is going to be what we need to be able to break through on the renewable side or some other form of energy that we can't even imagine right now to help meet our needs. Technologies are so critical to this because, as you can imagine, if you have a technology that works, finding that balance between reliable and affordable and safe and clean, well, that makes it really easy. There really isn't even any debate at that point because there's this great technology on the market that's going to take you there. So relationships and technologies, two keys to being able to have a successful strategy on energy policy, and I might add you could probably apply that to a lot of other different, let's call them issues or opportunities that we have and not challenges. So now we're going to get to the call to action. If you haven't already been thinking about energy, start to think about it more. I know you all have just come to expect it. But do you know that there are a number, in fact, there are way too many people who, if you ask them where the energy comes from that produces their lights in their home or the heat in their house, they're going to say the light switch on my wall or the outlet. That's their answer. We get our energy from a light switch and an outlet. Okay, you are missing a large part of what it takes to get your energy if you think it's the light switch and the outlet. And I'm sure there's not one person in the room here that feels that way, but there are a lot of people outside of this room that do. So you're not going to be able to make informed decisions if that's what you think. You really want to think about energy and not just about making sure you have what you need, but what are the implications on national security? What are the implications on the economy? What are the implications on your neighbors? You need to be thinking about all of that. So think about energy. And when you think about energy and you try to navigate through what the best policy is, try to stick to the facts. So one of the favorite sayings that the president of the American Gas Association always likes to remind us of, and someone, I believe it was a former congressman who passed this on to him, was everybody is entitled to their own opinions, but not to their own facts, right? Facts are facts. And then you can form an opinion based on those facts. Now, we do not do a good job of helping you sort through the facts. I believe there are something like, and in fact another study just came out today, there are over 70 studies that try to characterize what the methane emissions are from natural gas production, transmission, and distribution, over 70 studies, and not surprisingly, they don't all come to the same conclusion. So we do have to do a better job of trying to put studies into context, make sure you understand the assumptions that were made, and make sure that you are really able to draw your own opinion based on facts. But this is a very emotional issue when you start talking about energy, and it is very easy for facts to get lost when you have that discussion, and that is not going to lead to the best solution. And finally, consider a job in the energy industry. So as I said, it is an exciting time to be in this industry, and we want to move towards a cleaner and a more reliable and a more affordable environment. We do have an aging infrastructure. I mean, I mentioned that we've got the infrastructure that's the envy of the world. A lot of it is either being modernized or needs to be modernized. There are tremendous technology opportunities there. Some of you may have heard terms like smart grids, smart pigs. There's a lot of smart technologies out there that are helping. But we need to do more, especially if we want to crack the nut on some of these renewable technologies. All of that provides an opportunity, whether or not you're interested in working for a utility or working for a producer or a generator. And not surprisingly to you, there is a utility in every town in this country, right? If you want to live in Omaha, if that's your dream place to live, you can work for MUD, which is the Municipal Utility District of Omaha. And that really is their acronym, MUD. But you can work for them. And you can also work for a university or for a think tank or a research organization or the Department of Energy. And you can tackle the problems there. Or you can work on energy policy. So they're all different opportunities. But if there's one thing that I hope that you will take away from everything here that I've said today, it's that energy matters. Energy policy matters. How we approach our energy needs matter. They matter to national security. They matter to national economy, and they matter to you and your quality of life. Thank you.